Welcome to episode 200 of On Record PR. I am one of your hosts, Jennifer Simpson Carr, and today I am joined by three incredible Furia Ruble teammates, Kyla Thompson, Mahalet Ropar, and Kim Miller. Hi, ladies.
Hi, Jennifer.
Good morning.
Jen.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us for episode 200. This is a very exciting day for us. I think when we started 6 years ago, we weren't sure where this would go. And fast forward to episode 200, we've had so many incredible individuals and thought leaders and insights on this show. And we're going to add to that today with our recording.
Glad to be here.
So the three of you are new to the show. You haven't joined us before. And so before we dive into today's topic, I would really appreciate if you would just share with our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do for the agency. Kyla, can I start with you?
Sure. Thanks, Jennifer. So I was in-house for many years. When I graduated college, I planned to go to law school. And so I figured I should start out as a paralegal and dive into the billable hour routine for a little while, see if it was the right fit. Decided it was not the right fit, but I had done some event planning on the side and then found a business development events role in a law firm in the Pacific Northwest. So I dived into that and just fell in love with the business development events world. Had a great time for many, many years, went back to paralegal work briefly, and now I'm here at Furia Ruble in almost 2 years now, which has been amazing. And here at the agency, I handle our media tech and events management. So I'm kind of managing our media software for our clients, running reports, and then helping plan client events. And it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for welcoming us, Jennifer.
Awesome. Mahalet?
Well, it's great to be here. A little bit about me. I come from in-house as well. I had about, I think over my 20-year career God, that makes me feel old. I think I've been at about 5 firms, and I come by Furia Ruble actually as a former client. So I got to work with Gina and the team about 10 years ago as a liaison for the law firm that I worked at the time. And I've just, been super impressed and love everything you guys have done. And I'm really excited to be now actually formally here as part of the team. And I do the same thing I did in-house. I do client, I run a couple of client accounts, and I do business development with them. So from like an outside marketing and BD perspective, helping with strategy, guidance on, moving the firm forward. And it's really great.
Awesome. And Kim?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And it was such a pleasure to be with Kyla and Mahalet a couple weeks ago for the LMA conference here in Denver, which is where I'm based. I had the privilege of working with Jennifer Carr back when I was in-house at Sherman and Howard for 17 years, which Mahalet, I started when I was 14 there, so that does not make me feel old.
No, I can really tell.
So I've been with Furia Ruble for about 3 years now, and I'm a strategic account manager like Mahalet and work with clients on their PR, communications, and business development needs.
So we have a powerhouse team here talking to our listeners today. Thank you each for that intro. So the reason we are gathered here is to talk about your experience and insights, having recently attended the LMA's Tech West by Southwest Conference, as Kim mentioned, in Denver. It is the second year that the West and Southwest regions have joined forces to put this great conference together. I had the privilege of attending last year and speaking its first year in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I really enjoyed the conference. I found that every session that I attended was really packed with actionable insights. I remember the audiences being very engaged and really taking away ideas and actions that they could implement pretty quickly. For us, that meant for our clients, for in-house folks, obviously they brought it back to their law firms. but I wasn't able to attend this year. 3 of you represented us, as well as Gina, and we had 2 international faculty members, Mark Beasy and Deb Ruffins. So I'd love to get your take on your top takeaways from this conference, maybe a session you enjoyed the most, a new insight or strategy that you heard. And our goal today is really to share with our listeners something interesting, something that's a new insight, but something that they could go back to their firm having listened to today's episode and implement right away. So I will throw it out to the group. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to jump in and talk about, I've got a couple practical takeaways that I wanted to share from a session that I attended on content creation and how to make your content stand out in a pretty crowded content environment out there. A lot of firms are putting out a lot of content. But one of the points that came up in the discussion was how firms have used gated content for years in order to gather walled content to gather subscriber information and build databases and mailing lists and things like that. And how in today's tech environment, which is focused a lot on searchability and SEO and GEO, it becomes a question of whether or not that's an outdated concept and something that could be hurting firms, particularly as it relates to, search engine optimization and how these search engines are finding your information and thereby, discovering what an expert you are on a topic. So that was something that I wanted to bring up and hopefully that we can talk about a little bit more to bring back to clients.
So Kim, that's a great takeaway. And I definitely think it's something that has changed over time, given how long each of us has been in the legal industry. We've probably seen iterations of the strategy. Can you just remind our listeners before we dive into this more, what you mean by walled or gated content?
Sure. And this is specific to content that's created by a firm, either through newsletters or client alerts, anything like that firms are creating, not having to do with, information that you're pitching out to media, which is kind of a different discussion. But walled content is, firms create a newsletter, they put it behind a subscriber wall, and you have to fill out a form in order to see that data. And again, as I'd mentioned, what's becoming apparent is that SEO and GEO, they can't search content that they can't find. So that is, impacting firms' ratings or searchability when it comes to that.
So what's really interesting is if you rewind in time to at least when I started, I won't date myself, but maybe like the early 2000s, this was a big strategy, right? Email was somewhat new. Firms were investing in CRMs, and a big push was to obtain the emails of prospects, clients, as a way to start to distribute thought leadership and other content to them. So it sounds like fast forward with SEO and GEO, that strategy is changing. What did you find during the conversation that the cons were to walling content now?
Well, again, your readers, because there is so much content out there, if they have to jump through a hoop, I guess, to access your information, they'll just go somewhere else to find it. So readers are walking away. Second, and again, maybe more recent, is the discussion that we had about SEO performance and GEO searchabilities and their ability to access your content and how it impacts your indexing with these search engines.
And
so same thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just have something to add to what you're saying is that I think, if you go back a step, one of the other things that they were talking about is people aren't just they're putting the question into Google, right? Mm-hmm. What they're looking for, they're searching in a different environment. They're not searching on your website. So if that content is walled off, you're not going to come up in their search results, right? Or in an AI summary, and therefore they won't be able to then link it back to you. And I think that that's really the key, is that you might want to be connecting to these people, but you're never going to connect to them on the topics that you're interested in them knowing that you are capable of, if you won't come up in any of their searches.
Completely. And that's why I think, Jennifer, on an earlier podcast, you and Leslie talked about firm website traffic is down because, like Mahalet said, they're searching for you. They're using AI and Google to search you, and they never may actually end up on your website to subscribe to your newsletter to read your content. So that's kind of the issue. Same issue.
One of the things they said in that Kim, I'm just going to keep cutting you off. One of the things they said in that session too was they might not even go to your website after you come up in the search result. They might just call you, like they, ask the question in Google, you come up in the search result, they read the search result, they like what they see, and they say, give me a phone number, or what attorney do I talk to from this firm? That's still in the search, right? And then it produces a name or it produces a phone number, and they might just call you directly from there, never even having gone to your website. So it's, being available for that kind of searching, I think, is really important.
Well, and it's worth noting that this applies to not just to content that's behind a subscriber wall, but also if your content's in a PDF, Google can't search that. So just something to think about.
These are great points. And I'm going to drop in the show notes links to the episode you mentioned, Kim, but also a couple of episodes around SEO, GEO, and zero-click search, which is the concept that we've all just touched on here, for those listeners who may want to go back and hear about those in more detail. So Kim, how would you recommend, like what steps are we taking now internally with our clients in terms of recommendations, and what would you recommend for our listeners to take away from this change in search?
Well, I'm glad that you asked. So a solution could be to consider reversing the order. So instead of requiring a subscription to access the article on the front end, you can ask for this information after they've read it. So they, see it, they have gotten value out of it. And so you put something like, if you found this information useful, please click here to subscribe for, further news updates. So you get the same information, but kind of just in a reverse order. Another workaround could be considering a hybrid approach. So you could post a summary of the article, 300-ish words, that is, Google can search and crawl, and then gate the full article behind a paywall or a firewall. We all have seen this with a lot of publications out there that they'll give you, the little blurb, and then you have to sign up to access the full article. So those are just a couple of workarounds to consider, but it's worth having a conversation internally about whether or not, continuing to use content behind subscriber walls or gated content is really smart going forward.
This is a really big takeaway, and I appreciate you sharing it because firms really need to consider how they're spending so much time and resources on creating this thought leadership. And it sounds like it's an inflection point as to how is this content going to serve you best. Mahalet, I think you bring up a really great point, which is that websites and content have always been used to validate a decision. We tell clients all the time that you're winning and losing business every day that you don't even know is out there because of your online presence. And so I think it's a really great point that it's extended now beyond your website and your bios. You're now winning and losing work based on SEO and GEO results. So thank you, Kim. Kyla and Mahalet, any takeaways from the conference that you'd love to share with our listeners?
Well, let's see. Is it all right if I chime in?
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. One thing that's really great about the Tech West and Southwest regions, or the West region and the Southwest regions combining to create Tech West by Southwest, is it's now a technology conference combined with business development and marketing. And I had the privilege to be on the planning committee the last couple of years, which was wonderful. But this year I was an attendee, which was such a pleasure because it was so nice to be really truly present in these sessions. And a couple of the sessions one afternoon tied in together really well, and I wanted to touch on that. It actually, mid-afternoons conference sessions after a long day can definitely put people to sleep sometimes. And this one woke me right up because it was all just about getting real with human relationships, and talking about how to collaborate strategically across the firm, breaking down silos within departments. And there were a couple really good panels. And I'll just touch on a few things that really stood out to me. One thing that the collaboration, it was the data-driven connector was the title, how to collaborate strategically across the firm. And they talked about how collaborating across silos for firm-wide intelligence, like that collaboration is no longer optional. It's a competitive advantage. And they talked about how firms that integrate marketing, finance, intake, conflicts data, all of those departments in business development, of course, it builds a shared intelligence engine firm-wide that drives smarter pricing, smoother transitions, stronger client relationships. And a quote that really stood out was, "Be curious, not territorial. The more context you share, the better everyone performs." And it resonated with me because I remember when in-house and here at the agency, when we have really great communication across all these different departments and people in different worlds within the firm, you can just, if you understand what's going on behind those closed doors and behind those other department meetings, like you can help each other, you can collaborate in just a way that makes everyone and the whole firm better. And at the end of the day, the clients get better support. And they really talked about how like diving into the data was really important, and that really starts with a better understanding of the data in the first place, and asking like questions like, what data do others collect? Why do they need it? How can it serve multiple departments simultaneously? And I think that when those, you know, I think sometimes people in different departments get kind of, threatened a little bit by other teams, or like worried about like, oh, someone's going to take this data and run with it, or a client's going to get upset. But at the end of the day, if we just like try and understand each other a little bit better, we all have the same goal in mind: great client service. And one thing that this one session talked about was that firms that thrive cultivate psychological safety and curiosity across all of their teams. And when people understand each other's pressures, they share data more freely, they align around different shared client successes, and then silos give way to synergy. And this quote really stood out: "If we lead with kindness, empathy, curiosity, and generosity, we'll bridge every silo." And it just resonated because I remember having a lot of hard conversations with different departments, trying to collect the information we needed for a pitch or an RFP or various things, and having it just feel like you're hitting a wall sometimes. And that's so difficult when it's like we all have the same goal in mind. So how do we get around that? It was really great.
That's a great takeaway. Silos have traditionally been such a challenge at firms, and I think personally that culture has a lot to do with whether or not individuals within the firms are collaborative, are not territorial. I think that goes to hiring, to the feeling of job security, which sometimes in certain firms, not everyone feels like they have. So
Mhm.
Kyla, I'm just curious, what are some actionable takeaways that listeners could implement?
Totally. A few things, like as simple as like scheduling a virtual coffee with a peer in another office and asking about their biggest challenge and win that week, just to try and dive a little deeper into what is their day to day. Mapping your internal ecosystem, kind of understanding where those silos might exist between data, processes, people. And when engaging with IT or tech teams, describe the business outcome that you need, not the tool that you think you want, because that business outcome, like you might have a misunderstanding potentially, that the tool, you thinking that the one tool is going to get you the business outcome, but then they might have a whole other bunch of tools in their toolbox to help you out. So if you describe the why behind it, it will really help the situation. And then they're going to have more buy-in too. Um, Implementing cross training within your own department, to help create shared knowledge, that can be really useful. And I know, we do that within our agency. I just had a training session with our technology coordinator. So that way, he understands how when I pull technology reports, for our clients every month, he now has a better understanding. We're collaborating a lot, and he now has a better understanding of like my world. And now we are sending each other Slack messages constantly of like little tips and tricks to improve efficiency for both of our projects. And also that cross training just helps people be able to take vacation once in a while too. And really know that look, the agency and the firm and the clients are all taken care of while you're out. And then just in finality, like use empathy, curiosity, generosity as your daily operating principles. And if we lead with that, I think we're going to have a lot more success across the board.
I think those qualities and characteristics cannot be underestimated. They go so much further, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I have to call out one of our clients. They have mastered this. They have regular standing meetings among the administrative teams, like recruiting and marketing, and not just the heads of those departments, the entire team.
Mm-hmm.
They meet on a regular basis. Same with IT. They meet on a regular basis and talk about what they're working on and what's going on at the firm, and walk away with, knowing so much more about what's happening. And so they've done a really good job. So shout out to them. They know who they are.
I love that, Kim. I love that. And it just allows like a more like a kind of more natural collaboration. And I don't know. I think there's something really special about when you can kind of get an idea sparked with these brainstorming sessions between teams, and then help each other out at the end of the day. It makes all of our lives a little bit easier.
And I'm going to take that concept one step further. And for all of us, I think we've all been in this situation. You're now positioning other departments in the firm to be your advocates. So if they understand the why you're working on something, if they understand the goals behind it or the firm business goals that it supports, the next time someone bumps into them, over coffee in the firm lobby, or they hop on a Zoom call and a comment is made about another department spending money or another initiative. We know that happens, right? You now have advocates in all departments in the firm that can say, actually, let me tell you more about that. We just had a meeting, and wow, they're doing a great job. Or you should hear all the business goals at the firm it supports. So I think there's that obvious goal of like communication internally, but I also see that going one step further, that now you have integrated advocates who are able to speak about the projects that you're working on, and you can reciprocate just the same.
Absolutely.
Similar to that, you also have an extra sets of eyes and ears out in the firm, and they can, how many times have marketing and business development departments been surprised by, oh, there's a new hire starting on Monday, or there's, we have an RFP that's been sitting on someone's desk for 2 weeks. Like it's another set of eyes and ears who can keep everybody in the loop on what's going on.
It's a great point.
Totally.
So, Mahalet.
So my big takeaway was, I think, a takeaway that we always have when you go to tech conferences. I'll say Tech West by Southwest. It's always been my favorite LMA conference, right? Because who doesn't want to know what's new and interesting in technology? Like, it's moving so fast, right? So I love being able to find out what's happening, how other people are implementing it, what's possible, seeing the tech demos of the, different things that have been created, just since the prior year. So I think that I love that. I love that about this conference. The one takeaway I always have when it comes to tech, and it did not change, was tech is only as good as the human oversight that you have when you're utilizing it. And I think it's really easy to get excited about the new shiny widgets and all of the different things that they can produce for you. But not knowing how to utilize them properly, not knowing what you need out of them. I mean, Kyla kind of touched on this point a little bit earlier, knowing the why, or at least what the business outcome is that you're looking for, you can easily fall into a trap of acquiring technology that is underutilized, that frustrates your firm, frustrates the attorneys, that ends up sitting with no engagement and then a huge sunk cost. And that's especially dangerous for our business and business development marketing departments because our costs are always scrutinized. So if you are asking to purchase expensive technology, and it's not creating a business result for the firm that is tangible and measurable, you're looking at more budget cuts, or you're looking at having to continually justify the spend that is needed. So I think that it's really important that all of this technology continue to have human oversight.
You raised such a good point, because every time we hear AI or
Yeah.
generative AI right now,
Yeah.
one of the key takeaways or messages is, but a human has to be involved. And to your point, I don't know that that's different than any other technology. I think generative AI just makes professionals a little bit more uncomfortable than other pieces of technology, because it's newer, because it's different than anything we've ever had. So, Mahalet, what are some takeaways that we're bringing back
Sure.
to our clients and that listeners can take back to their firms?
Huge takeaway. You need to be really clear about what the technology is to be doing for you. It's easy to get caught up in the sales demo of what the technology can provide, but is that the outcome that you need? And if it's not, is it customizable to get you the outcome that you need? And then knowing that the technology is going to produce something for you, what are your controls and checks on that output to make sure that the data it's providing, or whatever it is, whatever the technology is, whether it's AI photos, like did it give you 3 arms like the one that I did give me 3 arms, right? So like, what is the check on the back end to make sure that the output is actually correct, and is what you needed? And so my first takeaway is understanding what you need out of that technology. And then my second big takeaway is every piece of technology should have a process. So if you are implementing technology into your firm, be it a new CRM system, some kind of one-off technology, maybe it's a cleanup, like a data aggregator, something to clean up data, having someone on your team that understands the progression of that technology, how to utilize it, and then creating a system of, this is how either we engage, like if your attorneys are going to engage, there's a process. This is how we have them engage with it. If it's someone on your team that's engaged, this is how we engage with it. This is how we utilize it. And this is how we check and make sure that it's giving us, really measurable, complete content, whatever the outcome is supposed to be. Otherwise, you get things that are just fancy and sit on your shelf without being used. And then you go to buy new technology a year or 2 later, and you're like, someone's like, oh, but didn't that thing that we tried 2 years, wasn't that supposed to do it? And you're like, oh no, this one's going to be better. But yet
This'll
you're
be
having the
different this
same
time.
pitfalls, right? If you don't have a process around it, if you're not clear what the business goals or outcomes are, if no one on the team is proficient in it, once again, you just got something that is, you can't call it a paperweight anymore. Like, when you used to buy, like, because it's not
Mhm.
actually tangible, but it's just maybe the term is it's using up storage space on your computers. Yeah.
Mhm.
And on that note, Mahalet, like I thought that I think you all were in the session, but the GC panel was really interesting because they were chatting a lot about how they want to hear more from outside counsel about how people are using AI within their firms. They want to know why and what you're and how you're using it and what you're using it for. Like all the details. They want to know that they want to know because they want law firms to actually collaborate with them to help improve their understanding of AI and how to ethically embrace it. And they're looking towards law firms to help guide them. And I mean, one of the quotes that stood out was, "I would pay my outside counsel to teach me how to use AI better."
Yeah.
And that really hit home. It was
Yeah.
like, okay, they need like law firms need to be like leading this. And they also, to your earlier point, I think you all probably remember this, but they were talking about how you have to be responsible and have the human behind it. Even if you're, I like this analogy, even if you're driving a little faster to your destination in the carpool lane, you still need to drive the car. AI is an incredible tool, but humans are the brains behind it. And that
Yeah.
really stood out.
That was a good quote.
That was a really good quote. And she made a lot of good points about, looking to her law firm to show her how to use. And, here's the other thing is right now everyone's loving Chat GPT, right? But do we understand like the best way, like what Chat GPT is good at and what it's not good at? Like we sat through that session and one of the attorneys or one of the panelists was like, you know what it doesn't do? It doesn't read Excel spreadsheets. Like,
Yeah.
you put
Yeah.
you put a spreadsheet and you put a table in, and every field in that table is just seen as the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So it's not,
Or it doesn't
it
understand the
depends.
columns. Like it
Yeah, it
doesn't
doesn't
understand the
Totally.
understand columns
difference.
and
Yeah.
rows and like how, so don't put like if you're, don't do that. Basically, it's, you're not going to get good information out of it that way, or that it's actually really good at creating a process. Like
Hmm.
it's really good at disseminating information and creating process from it. But I think most people just use it to draft, content, or and so just really understanding. I mean, that's why I say like you need someone on your team that understands the tool and that can teach people the best way to utilize it. Otherwise, like what are we doing here? Putting Excel tables into ChatGPT and getting nothing back.
The opening keynote at Tech West by Southwest, they talked about how law firms are uniquely well positioned for AI because their core asset is language, like briefs, memos, emails, client updates. And that's exactly the data that generative AI teams like learns from. But the firms also have like the mentorship culture and the longstanding client relationships that can help accelerate that adoption. But we have to know the limitations. Like it is
Yeah.
good at drafting, summarizing, organizing, analyzing large volumes of text, but it can't look
Not
at a basic
numbers.
spreadsheet and do some
Yeah.
simple magic and logic problems.
I think your point is well taken too, Kyla, that I think firms are waiting for clients to direct their AI processes going forward, and clients are waiting for firms to do it. So it's important from a law firm perspective. There's a competitive advantage if you're the one that's driving that process and talking about it.
Taking a leadership stance for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I
They
think it's
also
fair to say that if you're not doing it now, you are already falling behind. I know that at Legal Week 2024 and at Whipple 2024, so last year's conferences, there were many clients and law firms on the same panels talking about how they were already working together to pilot generative AI and other technology that they thought might be mutually beneficial, and how they were working together to learn through it, test it, see where there's pros and cons of moving forward with the technology. So if you think about how quickly technology is advancing, if you are already not doing that with your clients, you're at least 18 to 24 months behind. people who potentially could be your competitors.
Like,
And on that note, Jennifer, like this is a much bigger topic for another day, but I know we've talked about how AI is threatening the billable hour model. And one thing that was said was that, AI improves the efficiency and reduces the time spent, which challenges the billable hour directly. And the firms, many of the speakers said they must explore new pricing models like fixed subscription or value-based billing to sustain that profitability. And one of the GCs even mentioned, like, I'm going to start using AI to analyze my bills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's here.
So I attended the General Counsel East Conference in New York on Monday this week, and one of the roundtables that I participated in was on that exact topic, which is the future of billing and how firms need to consider how AI is integrated into their pricing models, their billing models, and of course, I was very vocal on this, how they're communicating those benefits and those changes, because I know this won't surprise the three of you. It may not surprise some of our listeners, but there are firms who are just changing their billable rates and adding technology costs to the next bill without communicating in advance those changes. I certainly wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of that. Um, but it is an opportunity to proactively communicate, to think very hard about messaging and the perception of your clients when they're receiving that communication.
Between that and the silos conversation, I feel like this is something firms have been talking about for like at least 47 years.
At least for all time.
So we're going to pause here from a message from our sponsor. And then we are going to come back and talk about I think a special topic, which is the rule of law fireside chat that was held at TWest by Southwest. So we will take a break now, and then we will be back to talk about that in just a minute.
This episode is brought to you by Furia Rubel Communications, a public relations and marketing agency serving law firms and businesses worldwide. With an expert team positioned throughout the U.S. and supported by an international faculty, Furia Rubel enhances our clients' brands through integrated communications by providing expert guidance in crisis management and high-profile litigation, protecting brand and reputation, and supporting internal marketing teams. To learn more, visit furiarubel.com.
So we're back from our sponsor message, and we want to close this episode by talking about a very special fireside chat that was held during TWest by Southwest. I was so sorry to miss the conference, and one of the main reasons was because I saw this on the agenda, and it would have been the first time I had the opportunity to attend a session that really truly spoke to the rule of law and the impact to our profession. Just to kind of frame the conversation for listeners, our CEO and General Counsel, Gina Rubel, joined two incredible professionals, Bill Bay, who is the immediate past president of the American Bar Association, and our friend Patrick Fuller from ALM. And they held a fireside chat talking about the rule of law, which is the foundation of everything we do and everything that our lawyers that we support and the law firms that we support stand for. And I'm going to quote Bill, and because I wasn't there, I'm going to then open it up for your feedback. But Bill said, protecting the law is not political. It's fundamental to being an American. And so I've heard from each of you, and I've heard from many attendees of the session about how they felt, how each of you felt, and about what was covered. But I don't want to summarize what I've heard, so I'm going to open it up to each of you to just share what you took away from the session and kind of recap for our listeners what the session was.
I'll start. So I think blanket statement, super appreciative that it's something that was addressed. I think that a lot of us who are in this industry, like Patrick made the comment, we have jobs because of the rule of law. Like that feeds my children, right? Like the fact that the law exists and the way that it does and how we support it is kind of the backbone of not only our nation, but like personally, like the foundation of the life that I'm living. So the fact that it was even addressed to be upholding the rule of law, I was very grateful for. And I think that underlying feeling was definitely something that was apparent in the room because it became a really emotional moment. You know, there were a lot of tears. There were a lot of moments where people, you know, Bill, Patrick, Gina had to take a moment to compose themselves while they were speaking. Even Jasmine, Treeless Carey, who was one of the organizers of the conference, who introduced the panel, spoke really passionately about how the rule of law has affected her life, you know, her family's journey coming to the US. It's really the backbone of everything that we all are doing here. And so I had a lot of gratitude for the fact that it was being addressed so boldly. You know, there were stories shared about moments where it's been really tough. You know, we talked about, you know, the judges and supporting the judges, even when they're not giving you the outcomes that you want. It's, you know, it's an independent party that is upholding the rule of law and how we need to be supporting that. Bill talked about, you know, years and years ago, a criminal case that was incredibly controversial, but that person had a right to
Defense
counsel.
Yeah.
And, you know, while we might not personally like it, that is the rule of law. So it's not always comfortable. It's not always easy, but it exists to give our society structure. So now that I've taken up all of the time, the point is that I was very grateful that the discussion even happened.
Yeah, and Bill Bay, I mean, he's amazing and did a great job articulating what the ABA's focus has been, and their advocacy efforts and their decision to speak out and how it's impacted in a positive way their membership and their fundraising, even from, you know, people outside the legal industry. I think he mentioned that his like dental hygienist donated to the ABA because people do, you know, even those not directly involved in the legal industry feel very strongly about it. And, you know, the idea of judicial independence and the attorney's professional responsibilities and diversity inclusion issues, those are all things that, you know, the ABA has taken a very strong stance at and about, and something that, you know, he had personally received threats, and that it's been just such a, you know, controversial issue, but they felt very strongly about it. And then talked a lot about how legal marketers can play a role in rebuilding public trust and helping the firm understand concerns of their internal community, like associates and staff, and how they feel about how firms are reacting or not reacting, or responding or not responding to these issues, and the legal marketing role in being a part of that discussion and the importance of their contributions in that area.
You all have summarized it really, really well. I'll just add a few other points. You know, fundamentally, like it was an extremely moving moment for the conference. I've never been brought to tears from an LMA session. No offense to other LMA conferences, but it really hit home, like you said earlier, about the fact that we're employed because of the rule of law. And that the rule of law is like, it's not political, it's bipartisan and the foundation of American democracy. And they challenged marketers they challenged legal marketers to guide firm leaders on when and how to speak during times of civic tension. And that trust is built internally before it can be projected externally. And that's super important to have really good internal dialogue, and balance all the diverse perspectives that you have internally and externally with every single person on your team and all the departments, and then all of your clients and the different industries that they support. And that's really complicated. That's coming from, it's in lots of different political and geographic and cultural regions. Like, there's a lot of different diverse perspectives here, and they need to be balanced, and while also staying grounded in shared principles, the rule of law. It was an extremely moving moment for me.
That's a good point, Kyla, too, because they did talk about the importance of understanding the firm's core values and having those, clearly articulated, and how necessary that is to build trust both internally and externally, that you're able to communicate what the core values of the firm are, and there's consensus among the firm about that, which is not easy because, like you said, there's such a diversity of opinion within firms. So it's
Absolutely.
a tough topic.
And it was talked about. I know that Jennifer, you and Gina have had lots of conversations about this on the podcast, but it was mentioned later in Gina's crisis communications breakout session right after the rule of law general session, that firms need to clearly define their mission and values, so they can use that as like a foundation when an incident occurs, or a crisis arises. Because if a firm doesn't know who they are, they can't respond effectively in a crisis. And at that point, when a crisis happens, it's too late to decide who you are.
Yeah.
And how that affects your internal teams, like, what associates are seeing coming down, and people making decisions about where they want to spend their time, what firms they want to be at as an employee, like, what do you stand for? Because if I'm here, that means I stand for it too. And not communicating that or not deciding it leaves it open to interpret, like, an individual's interpretation, and that might not be right. And you may bleed employees and associates as a result of it. You may bleed clients who are like, well, what do you stand for as a firm? Because if I'm hiring you and we're directly opposed in our values, then maybe I'm not going to hire you. So I think there is it's a time where this is being highlighted in our society, and it's a real opportunity for firms to have a leadership position here. Like, who knows the rule of law? Attorneys know the rule of law, right? Does the general public? Maybe not so much. So this is an opportunity for this industry specifically to really have a cultural moment in guiding our country.
I'm so sorry I missed this session. I personally feel like each of us on this episode and our teammates and many of those listening are in a very privileged position to be those who help shape business decisions for law firms, who help shape values, integrity, culture through all of the work that we do every day. Thank you each, not only for sharing your key takeaways, but for sharing your feedback on the rule of law session. I'm really grateful, even though I wasn't able to participate, that Tech West by Southwest, Jasmine, Emmy, and all of the organizers created space for such an important topic and allowed, space and room for individuals who are working and living and breathing in this profession to have a very honest and meaningful conversation. And with that, we're going to wrap this episode. Thank you so much to each of you. Thank you to our listeners. If you've enjoyed this episode or any of the 199 that have come before it, please consider leaving a review, sharing our podcast with a friend or a colleague, and continue to send your ideas for topics and guests to us at podcast@onrecordpr.com. We will see you next week for episode 201, where we're talking with Becky Bergman, our Director of Media Relations. We will touch on how media relations strategy is changing as a result of SEO and GEO, and we will hear from her about her experience attending the PRSA conference in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Kyla, Kim, Mahalet. I really appreciate you joining me.
Thanks for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much, everyone.
Thanks, ladies. Good
So
to
good to
see
see
you.
you.
Bye.
On Record PR is produced by Jennifer Simpson Carr and Matt Henderson, with support from the team at Furia Ruble Communications. This episode is edited by Isabel Horan and Christian Yamula. Visit www.onrecordpr.com for resources and more information.